Welcome to another episode of Matt Talks Hemp. My guest this week is Brianna Kilkullen. Brianna is the founder of Anact, a hemp towel brand focused on sustainability, activism, and creating meaningful change in the textile manufacturing industry. Before starting Anact, Brianna worked at major apparel brands Under Armour and Prana. We discuss why she chose hemp for Anact's products, general thoughts on the cannabis industry, challenges of being an entrepreneur, and much more. If you enjoy this conversation, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We had some minor audio issues with the beginning of the recording, so we're going to jump right into Brianna talking about her background. Hope you enjoy the episode.
My background is fairly a little unique. I started out working in human rights in the international development space. Lived in East Africa, lived in South Africa. That was always my passion. Study international business at GW in DC and was trying to always kind of merge the two. So after working in the humanitarian aid space, I decided to shift into the for-profit space just because I really loved the ability to have a budget to do the things you want to do. And I found a lot of frustration in the humanitarian sector being very limited on what projects people would invest in. So I decided to shift into for-profit so that we could have money to actually do the things I wanted to see happen. So I didn't expect that would be working in the textile space and moving it and working at Under Armour, but that was what was happening because they were recruiting. It was they were growing at the time like 30% a year. And I was in DC, they were in Baltimore. So I made that shift. And then once I got into textiles, then I really just jumped in and started figuring out, oh my gosh, like this is how our clothes are made. These are the farmers. This is the process. These are the factories. This is this insane supply chain infrastructure that no one I could talk to had ever been to. My family, my friends. There was just very limited understanding of how where their clothes were being made. And to me, it didn't make sense because we're all wearing clothes. So like, how do we not know the process of this? And so that was just like a major aha moment I had in, I would say 2014 in El Salvador. I used to go to the factories in Central America and manage their production. And so from there, I was able to create a sustainability role at Under Armour to start auditing factories for social labor conditions, and then also to build like a larger sustainability program. They really wanted to sign Notre Dame, and Notre Dame has really strict labor standards, and so they didn't have a program. So I basically was just kind of waiting in the wings, doing my time, doing my thing, kind of learning, and then I was like, boom, this is why you need this role. And so then I created that role, which reported into legal, and then I built that program out. And because of Under Armour's growth, it was just, we were very, it was all compliance based. It was like risk adverse. It wasn't progressive or proactive. It wasn't like a Patagonia thinking about how do we market this and how do we do this. And so for me, that was so important, was that we didn't just do the baseline, but that we were going above it and we were doing better than that. And so I made that shift to go to Prana out in San Diego because they were much more forward thinking, one of the most forward thinking brands in the space around fair trade programs and, social and environmentally conscientious in their employees in their headquarters. And so that was the big shift that I made. And then after working there, they were acquired by Columbia Sportswear. So then I started working really in the outdoor space. And I feel like my life is in 4-year increments. So I do like 4 years at Under Armour and I'm like, shift. And then I'm like 4 years at Prana and I'm like, shift. Where do I want to go? And I felt like I interviewed with all of the founders, the CEOs of some of the most progressive apparel companies in the space. And I didn't feel like they were doing what needed to be done. I didn't feel like they were actually acknowledging the climate crisis, that they were actually building models that were sustainable. They were just kind of following what everyone else was doing or what Patagonia was doing. And so for me, it was really important to see this actually shift because when the 2016 election happened, I had always thought like people were smarter than me and like knew more than me and were like more capable than I was. And then when that happened and I witnessed someone who had like run for office, who I'd seen like on a reality TV show, I was just like, oh, there's like no pedigree. Like there's no, like, no one's driving this bus. Like it is and like, politics aside, I was just like, this is insane. Like I can just, if this person can do this, then like I can do whatever I want to do too. So it was like the convergence of frustration in the industry, like kind of time for my move, meets like frustration with seeing what was going on around in the world, and then having an annoyance with like the smell of mildewy towels. And so all of that kind of like converged, and I'm like in China on an audit, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready for my next move. Okay, I don't need to go work for someone to prove that like this is what needs to be done. And I have a product I can make that uses hemp that's like way better than what anyone else is doing. And so then like on that flight back from China to California, I just started writing the business plan. I started researching. I started seeing the gaps in the marketplaces, and it just all kind of snowballed from there. And I was like, I got to go. I got to do this. And that was 2017. So it's been, yeah, 4, almost 5 years of just going for it and building a brand, building the market, building the product. And it's kind of crazy. So now we've just expanded from Jacksonville, Florida, where I'm from, to Austin, Texas. Now we're in Austin, and we're like attracting awesome talent and really cool investors, and like all market opportunity and scalability that I could have never dreamed was possible when I had this. But yeah, that's where we're at. And it's been a really exciting, albeit very scary ride. But I think that this is like, it's really cool to be in an industry and be doing something, converging what is happening with hemp and what is happening in the textile space with together to do something that's innovative and forward thinking. It's actually beneficial. And that's like what drives me every day about it.
Cool. That's unique. I wasn't aware that you created that role at Under Armour. So to kind of see a need at a big company like Under Armour to be like, hey, this is why we need to be paying attention to this type of stuff, historically using a lot of synthetic fibers and stuff like that. So that's cool to hear that. And I appreciate the color, just the background on kind of your story. So could we pivot into like, why hemp for towels? I know you mentioned you were sick of the sensation of like mildewy towels. So what makes hemp the perfect fiber to use for towels?
So when I was at Prana, what I noticed, what we did there for how we ranked fabrics is that Nike created a material sustainability index, which is now transformed into what's called the Higg Index. And so what they did is they ranked all of their fabrics from an environmental perspective. And then they created a thermometer that said like, here's where cotton versus hemp versus linen versus polyester versus nylon rank. And so hemp was number 1 as the most sustainable fiber on that thermometer. And so that was like my initial like aha moment. Okay, cool. This is one of the most sustainable fibers, that's been vetted quantitatively by a leader in this industry, noted. Then I'm looking at Prana moving towards hemp. And then I'm researching hemp's actual performance features. And so hemp is biostatic, meaning that its molecular structure is hollow, which allows the water to flow through. And so that was my, connection of this is environment sustainably checking the box, but its performance features of having a structure that facilitates a home goods, preferred fiber or fiber you would want in your home goods product and is very durable, to me is, okay, this is the preferred fiber. And also that it, I'm just blanking on the thought that I was going to say about it, but it'll come back to me. But yeah, those were the 2 major reasons why I chose it. And then also, that I just love its story. It's like such an underdog, like we've used it for so long here in the US. And then all of a sudden it was just illegal in 1937. And then we've been importing it. And so I love a good underdog story. I love a fiber that like is potent and doing its thing and is powerful. And then like all of a sudden, everyone's threatened, and it's like, no, let's bring that back. Let's see that happen. So those were some of the reasons why quantitatively, and then also just from the storyline that I was attracted to it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I actually just heard Ryan on a different podcast mention how similar with like just the background story, the underdog story of hemp, it's the only industrial crop that governments have been afraid of. So it's like very
Right.
unique situation there. So yeah, just in terms of marketing, kind of that's a nice little added angle there, because there's a lot of different reasons why it's been persecuted. But okay, cool. So when I don't know how many people have seen this video that I made, but it was one of the first videos that I had made when I was like, all right, I want to make content about hemp. What can I do? And just started taking products that I had seen and consumed and started making review videos about it. And this was, I think, shortly after Anact launched. It was in like 2019. And I did the towel review, went and took a shower with the towel halfway through the video. So that's on the packaging, and something that I thought was unique when I did that video, and I kind of highlighted it, was the quantitative water saving aspect of hemp versus, and it's a hemp and cotton blend, but like hemp versus 100% cotton. So can you talk a little bit about like, and I'll put a picture up of the packaging, but can you talk a little bit about the work that you did with Green Story to quantify like the beneficial aspects of using hemp versus just 100% cotton?
Yeah. And I remember when you reached out and did that video, and I was like, it just gave me so much like hope, and just it made me feel not alone, that I wasn't someone else who was seeing this market and this opportunity and hemp. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm gonna have to go back and replay that. And maybe
I don't know. The
repurpose
production
that in
value is
some way.
not very great.
You have to celebrate the journey.
That's true.
You have to celebrate all the moments. The glow up is real. I look at my old stuff and I like cringe sometimes, like old Instagram posts. I'm like, whoa, on like for an Axe like Instagram channel. And then I'm like, but look where you've come.
That's true. That's a good
Here we
perspective.
are.
Yeah.
And people want to see that too. I think that's the other thing, like hemp aside, you know, I think a lot of people are afraid of starting something and doing something because they want it to look perfect or like how everyone else is looking. And I think that I've like celebrated that, like our website could have changes, but like it's an indicator of where we are. It's indicative of like we are 2 going on 3 years old. And like if we had like a website that looked like it was a 10-year-old brand, I don't know if people would feel it's connected to our journey, if we were trying to pretend like something we weren't. So I think like accepting where you're at is powerful. But yeah, so for me, I knew this material sustainability index from Nike. I knew these different quantitative stats, but we need to apply that to our product, and we need to be able to make that content clean. And so Green Story was a third party that I connected with when I was working at Prana. And I just thought what they were doing was so powerful in creating an impact score, because so many people are making content claims, but they're not actually able to back them up. And so for me, I was like, well, let's do a life cycle analysis. Let's actually say like, this is what this is. And then we can be able to market this. So what we did with them is, when I was designing the product, I was giving them the tech pack and giving them the information. Then they ran that life cycle analysis to compare and said, okay, versus conventional cotton, this is how much water you're saving during the manufacturing process. And so then gave us the confidence to say, okay, we're moving forward and we're going to be able to market this. But this, impact score only goes up until the manufacturing. So like sometimes people ask us about that. We haven't done that. Like, how much water are you able to save by not having to launder it as often? And that would be like another impact score in the future we'd like to do. But I think for right now, we're kind of ahead of the game. Like, that's feedback we always get, is how much people love seeing our impact score, and feeling like they're making a difference with what they're buying. And then ideally what I'd like to do is then link that to the UN SDGs. And that way we could be able to say, hey, we're, socially and environmentally sustainable, but we're actually quantitatively measuring against these global goals. And this is the dent that we're making. Like, that's where we're heading with that data that we're collecting from them.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's unique. There's not many brands that even like want to talk about that, because there's nothing to talk about. Like, there's no beneficial thing that their products are providing. So it's cool to see, like, right when you get the product. Is that still on the packaging? Like the wraps on the towels? Cool.
Yeah, I actually just brought, so you can see that's where we put like the score in there.
Yep.
And I'm sitting outside, so I'm burning incense because there's mosquitoes. So if you see smoke going, it's
Okay.
incense that I'm
You're not
using.
smoking a joint during the
I'm not
podcast.
like I'm not like smoking a joint. I just have like it's incense that's like blowing back and forth. But like it's my natural like mosquito repellent.
Okay. Nice.
But no, there's something I was going to mention about the scoring. Oh, that's the thing, right? Is that like when I was working in the industry, when you see who runs apparel, it is these larger conglomerates. You have CEOs who are doing like a 3-year stint and then going to the next place. So there's very little incentives to actually do progressive, sustainable work in this space because there's no accountability for the people who would be the ones making the call. And so I like realized that, where there were certain things I wanted to do and that person was like not planning, they're not in it. There's no skin in the game. They're not in it for the long haul. They're focused on, I want to do this here and then move on, because the apparel industry is largely driven by low cost labor that's outsourced overseas. So like, it's kind of like just, you have a very elite, like small group that are making the decisions over like what brands we buy. And then the rest of the people are actually physically making those clothes overseas. And so those were like the discrepancies that I saw and why the industry wasn't doing something that was like on an Elon level, because there's just no incentive to do it. And so I was like, well, I can put myself in these shoes. I can be the CEO. I can think sustainability, and I can make this happen. And that was, one of the biggest drivers that's pushed me through that.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I mean, that's kind of where it has to start. Like consumers can demand more sustainable products, but it really takes kind of decision makers at the top making moves globally to provide products that legitimately do have more responsible manufacturing or using more responsible materials. And yeah, especially in the United States, is very much like, what did you do for me last quarter type of mindset around big business and stuff like that. So it's interesting that you've seen that perspective at a high level, and specifically the apparel manufacturing industry. Yep. Sorry,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's like they only want to move Gen Z is changing that. Like as these upcoming generations are coming, like they're asking more informed questions, but it's not fast enough. And the textile industry is one of the biggest contributors to the climate crisis. So I'm like, who's gonna move the needle? And for me, I was talking to my friend about it, and he's like, well, what if you just like go consult and like help these brands? And I'm like, I would rather blow them out of the water by setting the benchmark of what customers should expect from a brand, a textile brand, in terms of transparency and the reality, and then be like, now you have to come meet us there, because like this is unacceptable to keep thinking that if we push you internally, you're going to make the move. Let's just do like an Elon where you're just, here's the bar for Tesla. Good luck, Toyota. Like, good luck, everyone else. Like, and that's kind of what I think will move things, is being that kind of disruptor in the space.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. Just kind of setting the expectation. Capitalism will do the rest as consumers demand more responsible items. I'm with it 100%.
Yeah.
To talk about you being outside, I hear like some birds in the background. It's a nice like background environment for the podcast recording. But
good.
Yeah,
I wasn't sure if you'd hear them or not, but okay.
It's
good,
nice.
good.
Yeah. But so we know you're not smoking a joint right now with the incense, but what is, and not necessarily just consumption, like what has been your relationship with the plant before you started in Anact? So obviously at Prana, you were working with it a little bit, but like just in general, kind of what has been your experience?
So for me, it was like after my experience in China and then coming back, I really started to be ultra aware of all things cannabis. And so being in California, which is like more progressive than where I was in Florida, I just had exposure to that, to hemp, to marijuana, and be able to see trends. And so I started like wear testing products for hemp. I was just like, I'm going to try socks. I'm going to try underwear. I'm going to try towels. I'm going to try linens. I'm just going to start wear testing all of this. And so that was, where I started. I've stayed away from marijuana, like, and smoking hemp, because we do face a lot of people not buying our product because they do think it's a drug, because we don't have education yet. It's like, mainstream. So for me, it was like, I don't want us to get caught in a space that prevents people from buying from us. I would rather focus on being a cool, hip towel company that just so happens to use hemp than lead with the hemp story until there's more education and it's like more commonly accepted. Just because as a new brand, you can't afford to miss a sale. And so I just wanted us to feel like we had that accessibility for, right? Like if a kid wants to buy our towel, we don't want like their parents to ask if they're buying a drug. So that's been my thought process is really, I was very involved in the hemp industry, like going to NOCO and going to New Orleans for the hemp industry dailies, like yearly convention. And I did like speak there, but I felt like everyone gets really excited about a new industry, like whether it's crypto or it's hemp or it's like whatever, tech, robots, like everyone's like, and like jumps in. And then like you kind of forget, like not everyone's in that space thinking that way, and we have like a market to serve. So we need to like focus on our customer's problem, and we need to focus on like how we're providing a better solution. And like this exciting industry buzz is like a piece of it, but it's not actually what's driving it. So I've tried to like separate and say like, look, I'll be involved from like, let's pass legislation to legalize hemp so that we can eventually grow here. Let's advocate for like the infrastructure of this industry. But like, I'm not going to get too caught and connected to it, because that's not what our customer is thinking about. Our customer's thinking about, I want a great sustainable brand to support, to buy from, and a towel that solves my problems. Like that's where I'm going to give my energy and focus on.
Yeah, it helps you to not kind of box yourself in a corner of only appealing to cannabis enthusiasts, all aspect of the plant. It's like there's legitimate technical benefits of why you're using hemp for a towel. If you smoke weed, that's cool. This towel is good for you also, but that's not a requirement for you to like associate with the brand on a deeper level of what you're trying to do. It's more just about like, there's a premium product. It works well. It's made out of sustainable materials. That's it. If you want to learn more about the hemp side, yeah, cool.
Have a great shower. Yeah, like that's been the thought process. And I think, and you could also just whittle it down to like, I mean, I'm like a hustler, right? In the sense of like, I'm looking at market opportunity. So like if the market opportunity for, say, someone who smokes weed is like comparable to those who use a towel, then like we can have that conversation.
Yeah.
But like a $15 billion towel opportunity versus I don't know what the opportunity is for people who smoke weed and want to incorporate marijuana into every part of their lifestyle, but I don't think it's comparable. So I'm going to go for like the scalability and growth opportunity and profitability, and then and where I think is the markets are going. And I also like, I don't know if I'm a little scared about just any substance that we bring in and use. And I'm a little like, I'm watching it and I'm a little nervous, where I do feel like people said, oh, I don't drink, but like I just smoke. And like, I fear like dependence on any substance. And so like, I watched like a Joe Rogan podcast the other day. I was like, is he sober? Like, what's happening here? And they're like, no, he's always on something. That scares me. Like, I just think that we have certain things that come from the earth that we can use for different purposes. But like, I think the marijuana culture is like leaning towards like this daily dependence. And I think that I don't really see anyone talking about that's everything in moderation,
Yeah, that's a good point. A lot of times people would just be like, oh, it's from the earth. It's okay. It's fine. But it's like, yeah, poppy plants are from the earth too. But, opiates aren't. Great. So,
right.
yeah, that's interesting because I'm like very much in that community and up to date on kind of what's happening there. I worked in the cannabis packaging space for like 4 years. So I was very much every day was in that, going to the cannabis focused expos and stuff like that. And that's not something that's talked about. Alcohol dependency and addiction is something that everyone is aware of. And people like to say cannabis is not addictive. I don't think you can necessarily say that. Like, everyone is different. Everyone reacts differently to different substances. Yes, we have an endocannabinoid system that theoretically wants cannabinoids to, interact with it. But, to what extent all of that really impacts or affects us is still to be determined. And I appreciate you bringing that up, because it's not something that is talked about at all. So I would appreciate seeing kind of that become part of the conversation, just about like you said, everything in moderation. So that is not part of the conversation with cannabis.
No, I was like, I wanted to ask you about it, but then I was like, you never know what camp someone falls in. But like, to me, like being in Austin and the amount of, and I would just say it's specifically men that I've talked to that are high every single day and are like, this is my lifestyle. I'm like, I'm going to call a red flag on this. Like, this doesn't make sense to me. And that they're like, well, like no one's saying anything like alcohol, like there's no like marijuana is not marijuana anonymous. Like, so they're just like, I'm going to keep, this is okay. I'm functioning. And I think that scares me. And I've just seen it. I'm watching it happen more and more. And I'm like, I get it. Like, if you need it, if something happens, but like, what about just waking up soberly into this world and like operating, completely in reality? Like, what about that?
Yeah, it becomes a reality for some people, and it becomes baseline. Like, you need to do whatever it is to get to baseline, because then you're like, all right, cool, this is how I go about every day. So then it just becomes a standard of like, hey, I need to take this thing or smoke that thing to get to baseline. Yeah, and it's like, I know we didn't really plan to talk about this, but this is an interesting topic, because like me personally in my life, like I consume cannabis much less now than I have in the past. And I'm able to see kind of like how it had impacted my life in different ways, and kind of take a deeper look at like, okay, why was I so inclined to use cannabis so much more in these different times of my life? Like, what was going on in my life? So I've taken a deeper look at kind of my relationship with the plant the past couple of years. And now I like to, for me, and everyone, like I said, everyone is different. For me, it's a very efficient way for me at the end of the day to like turn my brain off and be like, okay, we're going to relax. I'm not working anymore. I'm just going to chill out, and it's going to kind of help me get to sleep. So I've found like a way that it works very well for me, and it's not an everyday thing. It's kind of like depends on what's going on. But yeah, I definitely would encourage people to kind of look at their relationship with anything that they're consuming, like whether it's food, alcohol, recreational substances, medical substances, like whatever it is. It never hurts to kind of take a look at your relationship with the different things that you're putting into your body, or just like consuming in general, whether it's TV or rate, like anything. So I appreciate you bringing that up, because it's definitely something that I think should be talked about more.
Yeah. And I think like one of my friends said, he's like, when everyone goes left, you go right. When everyone goes right, you go left. And I was like, is that true? He's like, yes. I was like, oh. And I think when I see just the mass amount of like push on that, I'm like, yeah, no, this isn't making sense to me. But like a really sweet story, just to kind of end on a note of what I did think, I did see something happen that my aunt, who's like in her 70s, my mom and my other aunt, three sisters, got together, and my mom had edibles, and she's like, let's do it. Like, we're like cool again. And so they do it, right? And like my mom's like, don't have this much of this, and my aunt just like throws it back. And then she freaked out and was like, I need to go to the hospital, like I'm dying, like this whole thing, right? But this was really powerful. I was like, well, what did you learn? And she's like, the only thing I could rely on was my breath. And I had to get connected to my breath, and I had to go internally and focus on breathing and breathing and breathing. And she's like, I've never done that before. And I was like, okay. And she's like, I'll never do anything again. And I'm like, that's fine. But like, that's pretty powerful. Like, let's focus on that. So I do think there are like those moments that are with any type of, drug that we take that like you can have these takeaways. But I just think that we are already going through so much in society, from everything that's happening with mass shootings to politics to Ukraine. Like, I think that we should feel that pain. And I think that there'll be things that will inspire and push us to live a more grounded lifestyle if we don't numb out. And I just don't want to see weed be used as a tool to do that. And I think it's really important to be present.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. And that's interesting too, because like your aunt gets an unlock kind of from that experience. Like, probably will never touch cannabis again, but but go into your breath, like in any situation will work. Like if you can't sleep, sometimes I find myself just like, okay, follow my breath for a little bit and then I'm asleep. Or just like any stressful situation. I mean, there's a lot of science out there about kind of like controlling your breath for different things, if you want to elevate your heart rate or if you want to decrease your heart rate and things like that. So yeah, no, I appreciate that. There's definitely needs to be more of a conversation around that, because right now it's just like this cool new thing that we have access to. And I'm in Massachusetts, so like it's everywhere now. In some states it's not, and it's kind of the legal weed is in these states that don't have actual legal weed, whether it's D8 or all these other derivatives of THC and all those things. So it's like a new cool thing that there's a lot of money behind it as well. So there's the big interest from all these big companies are trying to figure out a way to kind of get their footholds in, just to make some money in the future. So it's not really in like big businesses' interest to promote that thought process of being more mindful and just in all aspects of everything we consume. So we'll see how that develops. But that's interesting. I'm glad we kind of had that interaction there with that conversation.
Me too. Yeah. I mean, everyone likes a quick fix, but it's like, go for a run, like drink water, eat plants, like there's like natural things that are occurring. And then like, if you need to have an edible to help like get you to bed, but like there's so many other things available. And I just want to be really cognizant of that as this marketing and the industry unfolds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I respect that for sure. To go back to kind of Anact and your experience specifically, the experience that you had at Under Armour and Piranha, I feel is very unique. I mean, you created a role at Under Armour, so definitely very unique. But what about those jobs kind of prepared you to launch your own brand? Like specific experiences or interactions that you might have had or anything?
Yeah. I mean, so from me starting in supply chain and sourcing, like within, like being able to source the product, like I'm very aware of relationships with factories, and I was able to find our factories because of that, and understanding global supply chain, understanding production, how to make a product, how to create a tech pack, how to bring that to life. But then the learning curve for me has been how to create a brand, how to market, how to sell, how to raise money, how to manage a team. Those are things I was aware of, like working there, and like saw, but like I wasn't ever doing them. So then I took best practices of what I saw or what resonated with me to carry that to Anact. And so that's definitely where I've been having to kind of cut my teeth and always move into, because at Under Armour with supply chain and stuff, it's like we just need to get the product to the warehouse and then we're done. But like now with like Anact, it's like I got the product to the warehouse. Now I need to like get all the sales channels like moving the product. So like I'm having to think A to Z instead of just like a portion of the process. And so I think that I've taken best practices, but I also am really focus on how do I get to do things that like a larger entity can't do because it's like too big for them to shift. So for us, like how we're not using, all of our products are dye free. So then we're able to sell a product that no one else is selling on the market because of these like little simple switches of what we're doing. And so that's like gives me a lot of energy around it. But I feel like entrepreneurship, you're just constantly learning. Like it doesn't matter. Like once you jump, like you're in it. And I feel like I've learned I love to build. Like hemp's a part of that story, activism's a part of that story, but like bringing a vision to life is really what keeps me going. It's very exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, starting from nothing and kind of doing the whole process yourself. Because I mean, it's like it was only
Yeah.
you for a while in the beginning, right?
Yeah, I tried to recruit like co-founders. I was like, anyone interested? Anyone about this? And everyone didn't see the opportunity because it was 2017. So it was like still very,
Yeah.
legislation had just passed. You
Mm.
know, it wasn't, or like 2014 legislation passed, 2018 hadn't passed. So like people are still like, I don't know what you're talking about. So I had to jump basically to prove the concept and say this is what this will be in order to attract, I think, what we now have in terms of people who see the opportunity, you know, investors who see the opportunity. Like it's taken a while, but I think sometimes I was like, I don't know, I had the vision in 2017. I saw it like in China. I was like, oh yeah, this makes complete sense. I'm going to start paddling and I'm going to catch this wave. And then all of a sudden you get so far and you're like, how did I get here? Like years later.
Mm.
And then you see people who are like, oh yeah, I've been starting to research and like get this. And you're like, okay, like now we're on our next iteration. This next wave of people will come in to support the growth of the business.
Yeah, and I mean, even just like hemp in general. In 2018, the conversation was, I mean, like really until COVID, pretty much was like CBD. What can we grow in the United States for cannabinoids to sell into this like big CBD wave? And people didn't really see like the industrial applications of it, which is changing a lot now. The past couple of years, there's more of an emphasis on fiber and grain varieties, specifically in the United States, and more education on like why hemp fiber is beneficial. Like, why is a hemp towel better than this 100% cotton, conventionally grown cotton towel? So I think there's more awareness. I mean, I would like to think that like that's kind of the intention of everything I do with the content is like to try to spread awareness around the actual benefits of it. Like, I don't make a lot of content about the like smoking weed and cannabis and medical, and there's a lot of stuff there, but it's more like, okay, there's this whole other side of the plant that is just starting to come back. So that's something that I always kind of try to focus on. But okay, cool. So you kind of talked about it there too, but I was going to then go into like what aspect of growing the brand and launching the brand has been the most challenging. And you kind of touched on it there, like the other aspects that weren't supply chain, essentially, you know, sales, raising money, marketing. Is there anything specifically that you've seen as to be the most challenging aspect?
Yeah. And I'll combine the two because I think, like, to your point, you know, watching our industry, everyone's always focused on ROI and the fastest way they're going to get that. And so I think for CBD, they're like, this is the most we can sell of the plant. But no one thought about the actual market opportunity that like, oh, that's a saturated market. Like that's not really scalable. Like within the pharmaceutical space, there's so many brands coming out. And I think like that's where we push to say like there's hemp for food and fiber, fuel, like these other areas that have much bigger market, even if they're cheaper, you know, they're not the most expensive part of the plant. And I think that shift has been tough to articulate, but that some of the people who get it. You know, and for me, I think the most difficult thing has really been learning how to change my perspective and relationship with money to grow the business. Because when I first started out, I was like, all right, I have this savings. I'm going to put this forth. I'm going to build this business and then it's just going to operate as such. And then what happened was that it was like these minimums are so high at factories that like one person cannot actually place an order unless you're really financially wealthy and do this on your own. So then it's like I went down the traditional like space of bank loans and what does that look like? And we got hit because no one wanted to sell to a hemp company because things legislation's still not ironed out, or to loan to a company that uses hemp. So then it was like another, lesson of like, okay, well then let's just market it as a plant towel. Like that's it. But then they're like, oh, well, she's 28, single, she doesn't have a W-2 anymore. Like, what collateral can we get from her? And so then there was like all these other factors that are in play in our system and our structure as a country that prevent you from getting access to the capital you need to grow. So then really what ends up happening is you have to fall into private money, and navigating that was tough because I just like I've never done this before, right? So I'm like, okay, like what return do you want to see? Like what's a fair return to provide? What incentivizes you? And I'm really grateful. I have two awesome angel investors. We're bringing on several more investors. That like what I've learned is like who sees the vision, and like who believes in the product, and then who has like strategic contacts to help us get there. But like I've really had to teach myself, okay, what should our valuation be? I've built out our business plan, our forecast, building out the team. What sales milestones do we want to hit to unlock certain aspects to get like this opportunity? And having conversations with investors and learning how they operate and what they're looking for, and then matching all of that up so that we have capital to grow. Because that's the part I didn't really understand. Like you can get to a place which we've gotten, like we did Good Morning America last year and we would have been break even. We were profitable, right? We sold enough to cover the costs I've put into the business, and like any outstanding stuff we could sit. But then you're like, well, now I have to reinvest that into the growth of the business. And so like big PR stuff like that doesn't happen all the time. So then you have to bring in outside to grow that. And so I think like navigating that, hemp aside, has just been gnarly. But I do feel like I've almost gotten there, like in terms of really understanding the conversations, the expectations, the process, because I think that's what's going to differentiate what brands come out or what companies make it, is who is got the capital and the strategic contacts who gets your vision to take you to that place. Otherwise, I think we'll just consistently see small brands, small things, small like companies using hemp, but not actually scaling it. And I think the scaling part is what just really pushes the industry, which gets farmers confidence in that we're really going to have a crop to grow. And I feel like that's our responsibility, is to do that. But yeah, that has been for all my like family and friends. Like I'm like so grateful for them because like they've never done it. Like my mom and dad are first generation immigrants. Like they're like, I don't know what you're doing over here. Like, everyone's just like, we'll just keep you praying for you, because they're like, safety is for them like get a job, you get a 401k, you get stock options, and you work for someone else and you get paid time off, and like here's your holidays. And so to like be like, nope, none of that is what's happening. We are going after a vision. These are all the things and hurdles we're going to have to hit like along the way. Like, welcome to the party. They're like, it's a bit much for my nervous system.
Yeah, it's definitely not for everyone. And just from following you and your content that you put on social media, from like your personal pages and the business pages, I had a feeling that that was going to be the answer to that question, because it's been really cool to see from the beginning you are very open and transparent on social media with kind of how you're feeling about certain things and different like aspects of the company and different milestones and things like that. And I remember like when you first started having those meetings with VC type angel investor people, of bringing them in, and the everything that was going on. It's interesting to see from like from being able to follow a small business and a founder who is very open about
how they are feeling about making different decisions for the business. And so it's been really unique to kind of see that behind the scenes side of you and the business, and how what's kind of like helping you make your decisions in certain aspects. So I
Yeah,
expected.
that's what you expected.
Yeah.
Well, let me think of something unexpected. No, I'm kidding. But I think like the before and after is like people love a before and after, but like I'm like, well, I do too. Same. I would love to say like, here was us here, and now we're doing this. But I feel like what's more inspiring is sharing like the actual process, because then people can see like, okay, like how many times I was told no, how many times I thought something was going to happen and then it changed, and that like we still kept going. And I want that to be what people can connect with about the struggle of it, and not just the finished product. I also think like I was going insane, like just focusing it on myself. I'm like, I'm just going to like not tell anyone anything because like I've chosen this journey. But then it's like very alienating, it's very isolating, it's very lonely, because like most of my friends are, you know, like climbing the corporate ladder, they're doing very well. But like if I go have dinner with them, like it's very difficult, and I don't have the bandwidth to necessarily tell them about everything. So I think like I give you social media as like a therapy tool in that sense, to inspire others, but also to be like, hey, like here's the journey I've chosen, here's what I'm doing. I guess the other thing I would say, so you said the question was like, what's the hardest, or like the most, remind me again
Yeah,
what you
just like
asked
the
before.
most challenging aspect of kind of growing the brand, or like what surprised you the most between growing and launching the brand.
Okay. So the curveball, I'll give you a curveball because I feel like I walked right into what you expected. Um, is so they say that brands stop growing or companies stop growing when founders no longer want to solve the problems. And as long as at this stage you're constantly in the solving problem mode, like you know you're going. So this is kind of a funny one, but like truly, like my dating life, like that has been a challenge, because you're growing, right? But you're like, I also like want to have a partner and like a family, but you're in this space, you're in this industry, you're going to places like no one's gone. And then you're like go on a date, and like this guy's like, yeah, like finish my like accounting gig today. And you're just like, well, I like negotiated, like I'm closing in a round, and I've like figured out evaluation. And then I'm like, you know, making sure our influencers happy with this like content thing we're putting out. And it's like you know, there's not a lot of women in the hemp space either. So it's like, that's like sometimes tough too, is just being like, how I want to keep building, I want to keep going, but am I going to outgrow like anyone that potentially I would want to date or something, you know, like those are like the thoughts that come through your head. And you're like, who wants to like have this awesome brand and company, but you don't have anyone who understands you? So sometimes those things will prevent me from being like, do we really want to go for this like vision? And I have to kind of walk myself out and say, yeah, no, people will continue, there'll be less people, but you'll continue to connect with the right people. But I think those are things no one talks about, because they're like, yeah, how far do you go? And then no one's around you.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Yeah, as you continue to kind of separate yourself from what most people are doing, just the people that can associate with you on a deeper, more emotional level, the quantity of those people starts to decrease, as well as you're kind of continuing to elevate yourself and what you're doing. And besides that, I mean, the time commitment, like you're running a business, trying to grow a business, like that requires a lot of time commitment, and that doesn't exactly allow for, you know, spending a lot of time on a relationship and trying to kind of foster a new relationship with someone who doesn't know you, doesn't know the vision, might not associate with like how much time you actually need to spend working on your goal. Because not everyone, like you said with your parents, like some people are very risk averse and they're comfortable with what's expected, and every day they know what to expect in a day, and like they don't like uncertainty and trying to, take a risk to make something different happen. So cool. All right. I appreciate that curveball. Yeah. That's just like another aspect of a little on a deeper level. Like I appreciate that you're willing to share those types of things. Cause I think it's like valuable to like, I personally want to know stuff about like the background of a company and a founder and what they're thinking about and what they're going through. Like, I think it adds more to the brand and just like it helps people associate on a deeper level and connect with the company. Because there might be other people who are going through the same thing. And now they might be able to be like, hey, I'm going to reach out to Brianna to talk to her about this or whatever it might be. So that's cool.
I think people forget like we're humans. Like we all desire to have these human needs met. And then we also have different like goals and passions we're pursuing. And so I think sometimes people will like put it on a pedestal and be like, that person can't feel or think, or it's like, no, they are feeling all of the same things. They're choosing this. And I think like for the one other personal context clue to why I am okay in the risk adverse or risk space is that when I was 22, when I was living in Uganda, I traveled to Rwanda and I had an incident where I was kidnapped. And so I survived that incident.
Shit.
And yeah, so it's like something I like would never tell people, right? Because I'm like, who's going to be able to understand that? Like no one can understand being kidnapped. And I think that I'm coming out with it more because I think it helps people understand me more. Whereas like, I think life is going to throw you curveballs and it's how you respond to it. And I think people love to think I can control this. And that happened to me. And I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure I now know what I'm made out of. Like I came out of that and it wasn't because they let me go. It was because I made it out. And so I think that I like just adopted this mentality of like, this is not the scariest thing I've been through. Building something, talking to investors, like I've been through much scarier things in my life. And so this isn't rocking me like I might have rocked someone else. And so I think that I'm starting to open up and share that more with people because like I don't expect anyone. I've like healed in therapy with that work, but like it's just I think when someone threatens your life and you come out of that, you're like this you can't bring me this doesn't stimulate the same response that would have stimulated from me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, someone giving you a no about anything in your business in the grand scheme of things is like, yeah, okay, all right, they'll go on to the next one. Thank you. See you later. Like,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah, it does not even rattle me.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm like, it's fine. We're good.
Yeah, that's good that you can use that and kind of have healed from that and can use that to just have perspective. Really, I feel like that's important. Just in any aspect of life, like, well, things could be a lot worse.
Yeah.
Cool. Wow. Okay.
Sorry, but heavy. But I hope that at least, yeah.
Yeah, it just kind of helps give more context to, yeah, like you said, just like who you are, why you're making decisions, how you feel about certain things, and yeah, that's interesting. I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah. I'm glad that everything that you've kind of worked through it and now use it as like a kind of superpower to help you through other situations that might be a difficult situation running your business. But like I said, the perspective of, okay, this is actually not that big of a deal.
Yeah. And
cool.
That's, I think the hardest things we go through once you come out, use them as your strengths, use them as your superpowers. Like it's not to be labeled or stuck or focused on why me. It's to say this happened, this is how I responded, and this is how I'm going to use it moving forward. And I think that's what just drives me in that.
Yeah, cool. One of the questions I wanted to ask you was based off of something I saw you put on LinkedIn. So it was something along the lines of like, I think starting a company and growing a company is one of the most transformational things that like anyone can go through in their life. So I want to ask you like, and I think you've kind of touched on it on certain points, but like how has your life really transformed from day one idea to start Anact to where you're at now?
Wow. I think the biggest thing for me I've noticed is that when I worked at Under Armour, when I worked at Prana, other companies, like I was just go, 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 and very work focused. And then like my relationships were just maybe like nice to have for like my friendships, my best friend, all of it. Like when I had time, I had time. And then I think with COVID meets just like the ups and downs of a business, because like there's like we're going through like a major transformation right now, and it's very, very uncomfortable and it's very difficult. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, what actually matters here? And so I think that the biggest shift I've seen that Anact has done for me has been prioritizing my relationships in my life over just the business. And I think that that has been really big because it's allowed me to show up and allow me to see people show up for me, and having to ask for help and having to be vulnerable and having to like realize like in this grand scheme of life that we're living, that like this one purchase order and doing this and this is like not what I'm going to be defined by. It's going to be like how I showed up for the people I care about. And so I think that that's something I'm really grateful for. Like now I really love, like I love everyone in my life, and I like really want to like spend time and like listen to them. And I don't want to just say like, oh, I have a meeting, so like I can't see you. Like I want to find a way to make that happen. And in addition to running the business. So I think it's like cracked me open to being vulnerable, asking for help, and letting people get to know me more. Instead of just like, where's Brianna? Oh, she's gallivanting off in somewhere and making this project happen. Like I'm much more present, grounded, aware, attuned, and like available. So I'm proud of that. And I just think this journey, this choosing the entrepreneurship journey, brought that out in me.
Okay, that's powerful. That's cool to hear that. I was just I listened to Jesse Itzler have a speech last week, and something that he said in the speech was, "Don't sacrifice what you have for what you want." So like the same thing, just kind of like aware of, you know, you want to grow the business, you want to have a successful brand, you want to make a difference, but at the same time, you have those relationships that you want to foster and continue to connect with the people in your life that you care about. And sometimes I feel like the culture of like entrepreneurship is very much like work your face off, sacrifice everything to make whatever your dream is a reality. But it's like, yeah, that's not sustainable. Like you can do that for a little bit, but like, I don't think you're going to be able to do that forever. And if you do, at the end, you're probably going to be regretting some different aspects of your life if kind of that's all you did was grow the business. So I appreciate that perspective.
Yeah. And I think that like that hopefully is changing too. Cause if you do that, which I've done that before, when you have that mentality and that energy, I do think it's needed at certain times. Like I went incognito for 2 to 3 years. Like no one really saw me. My friends knew she's building something, but like I didn't plan any trips. Like I didn't do anything. Like they were living their lives and the way that like they had been living them, and then I was just missing. And so then I think I like reemerged and then redefined like the way I wanted to show up. But I think with entrepreneurship, like you do need that maybe time where you're like, I just need to birth this. Like I just need to see this come out in the world, and like you have so much energy for it. But then if you're like, I really want to see the vision happen, working in that headspace, to your point, is physically and emotionally detrimental. And I think you realize like you're a resource just like anything else is in the business. And if you can't show up, if you're burnt out, if you don't have the energy, then like no one's going to, you're setting the tone. So then no one else is going to want to come and be a part of that. And then if they do, then that's not healthy. They need to figure some stuff out as well. If that's what they're attracted to, is like a burnout, you know, you're all running away from something. And so I think that that's something I hope that with entrepreneurship can shift in the dynamic, to say like founders are a resource just like everyone else and need to be respected, preserved. And like I even see that with salary changes. Like it used to be investors don't want to see founders take a salary, but like now they're like, actually please, because I need to know you're going to be able to carry this forward. And so I think I'm hoping those shifts will start to happen, so that more people can start things that are needed in this world and have the support system to support them, instead of it just be like eat ramen and good luck.
Yeah.
Which I think we've typically have done.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. And like you said, there's a time and place for that, but the other side of it is just like, how long how long will that last? And I think making that more common is just talking about it more, like creating a platform for people to see like, hey, this is how I've operated my business and it's doing well. You know, we've kind of balanced these different things, and this is why that's important. So that's, yeah, I think it's just part of the conversation. Like the more people talk about it, the more normalized it's going to become, kind of get into the culture. Okay.
Exactly.
So what I'm curious about is what the next 5 to 10 years looks like for Anact. Like what's your short midterm plan for the company?
So we just expanded from, Jacksonville to Austin. So now I feel like we have this breath of fresh air. And like the color behind that is that so my dad's side is from Ireland. We were in Ireland in March for a family wedding. The day before the flight, I got COVID. My best friend and I got COVID. I ended up being in Ireland for almost a month on lockdown, which was wild, but we did it. We made it through. It was very unexpected. And like most people would say like, oh, wow, what a great place to have COVID. It's like, but like you have COVID. Like, it's not like I know, like St. Patrick's Day, we're like in our hotel room, like waving to people, like, and they're like, oh, they're like, you were asymptomatic, right? I'm like, no, I was symptomatic. I had symptoms. I was sick. We were in lockdown. And I think it was like a lot of revelations around like, what is Anact? What is the vision? What are we doing? And how do we get there? So that was where it realized like in Jacksonville, Florida, where I'm from, we just kind of tapped out the whole scene, the startup scene. And we just weren't like, they always say, you never want to be the smartest person in the room. I felt like I was like kind of always the smartest and the most inspirational. And I was like, who's going to do that for me? I need to be inspired. I need to be challenged. And so moving to Austin, I've always felt like it's just been this phenomenal, like, ecosystem of creatives meets entrepreneurs, meets like the political system, meets the just support of people who build things from scratch. And so I feel like now we are in the right space to expand. We're going to do more wholesale markets. So we're going to lean off of D2C, lean off of like investment in an individual purchase, and focus more on how do we get into big box retailers? How do we continue to scale into boutique hotels and spas? Because those are reoccurring revenue channels for us in order to build a really strong financial foundation. And then that allows us to do more creative things that I want us to get to, to do. So like playing around with natural dyes. Like I have a towel, we are using leftover rosemary, and it's making this really beautiful, like dark gray, so that we can offer a natural dyed line. But I think right now it's, how do we build security of what we're doing, and then we can innovate. So once we do natural dyes, I really want to see us manufacture here. Like I really want to see farmers grow hemp and us process it and then be able to sell it to these markets that we're creating and selling to, and have an entire circular loop that is the future of what we would call like conscious capitalism. Like we have the lowest carbon footprint, we're serving the markets, we're creating jobs. Like that's really intriguing to me to be able to do. And then I would say the other aspect of it is like, how do we continue to promote activism? How do we continue to inspire people to create, do what's breaking their heart, what they want to see? So what that looks like is I would love for us to have these like ACT UP spaces where, if you've been to Tom's, have you been to Tom's like flagship shops ever?
No.
So, the shoe company?
Yep.
So what I love about them in LA, they have a spot, and I would love for us to build this out in Austin, and then all these other things we do would kind of all feed underneath it, but where we would have socially, environmentally conscious, like organic juice coffee shop with tacos. And it's like a co-working space meets event space. And then we sell our product and weave it through the shop. But it's like really all around activism and saying like, here's what I did in my industry with what I knew, and this is what happened. and then be able to say like, and this is what so-and-so is doing. And I love for like you to come in and you could order, you'd be like, I could have the Gandhi or the MLK or, you know, the Greta like drink. And then you're just like around other people who are like doing things the way that like you're driven to be doing things and like cultivating that energy, even if they're not the same thing. And then it's like we host these events around the textile industry and fast fashion and what our vision is and how we're doing it. So it's like spreading this energy of activism. That's the vision of where I want to go. And I feel like we're in a space where people can receive that vision and have resources and tools to support it. But I read a book called The Buddha and the Badass. And have you read that book?
No, I haven't heard of it.
Okay, I think you would love it. But it was really like, because so many people, when I would like tell them things I'm interested in, they're like, please, like, dumb it down. Like we've gone too far. We've gone too, and I'm like, okay. So I'd be like really quiet, right? And then I read this book, and it's like, don't ask if your dreams are worthy of you. Don't ask if you're worthy of your dreams. Ask if your dreams are worthy of you. And so it helped like me kind of get relieved. And it's like, the more that you share the vision, like what you really think, like your top tier vision, the more that like people will see themselves a part of that, and the faster you'll get there. And so I think that pushed me. And obviously I'm a huge fan of like the Kanyes of the world, because not that there's a lot, but like Kanye's, I don't know if you knew this, he's really into hemp and he's really into natural dyes, and he's investing a lot in sustainable textiles, especially for Yeezy. And so like I've been watching interviews and following like his work with the founder of Stance Socks and what they're creating. And so like my thought process on just going back to like vision is like, you know, setting the bar of like what needs to happen, even if not everyone else is doing it. And I think my brain loves to tell like, you're going to have to figure all of that out. You're going to have to do all of these steps to get there. But I think we need to like release that and just say, here's where we need to go. I'm going to take simple acts each day to get there, and that the rest is going to come to me, like whatever that looks like. And I think that those are things I just wasn't taught or like hadn't heard, but like that's, I think, what's kind of needed in order for us to really stretch ourselves, to grow, and to see things come to fruition. And so that's, instead of looking around, I hate looking around at what everyone else is doing and being like, okay, I'll just do a little bit better than that. Or like, well, at least I'm not like that. At least I didn't do that. So like, I'm good. And I'm just like a huge proponent of like, this is your lane. These are your experiences. This is what you've done. This is the top of what you need to do. And now you go forth and put your horse blinders on and make it happen, because anything else is settling. Anything else is a cop out. It's not pushing you to be your best. And I just believe in doing your best, and whatever you do, like this life's not a dress rehearsal. You got to go. So that was a lot.
Yeah, no, I love all of that. That's awesome. Because I mean, like when you ask someone who has a company, like, all right, what's your 5 to 10 year vision? A lot of it's like, well, we're going to release this product, and then we're going to enter this market, and then do this. But yours is like much higher level, to creating spaces to help other people and bring people together who have similar ways of thinking about things, maybe, but are trying to do different things. Just creating a safe space for that. So that's awesome. I look forward to the day that I go into a hotel and I see an Anact towel that I didn't bring there myself. So that's exciting as well. But I love the idea of ACT UP spaces. Just because you're in Texas now, have you heard of Famous Juice Company or anything Amos Lozano's doing in San Antonio? Excuse me.
No, I'm like a Juiceland girl, but tell me, what should I be know? Tell me what I should know.
Yeah. So he has an interesting story. He's starting right outside San Antonio. He's starting something called Famous Juice Company. I had him on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he had built a small walk-up juice bar made out of hemp lime, that his vision for the company is basically to put these like small walk up juice bars and smoothie cafes outside of major metro areas in Texas, where there's like health food deserts is what he's calling them. And he's infusing cannabis into the drink. So they're like juicing cannabis microgreens essentially, as like an option, but there's also just like raw juice that he's doing. And big emphasis on education around the benefits of hemp and incorporating healthy foods in your diets and stuff. And I think just because you're both in Texas and it seems like something like Act Up Spaces, I see him kind of doing some stuff in the hemp community in Texas that have that kind of vibe to it. Just like community people getting together, talking about how to make things better and different things, whether they have a business or not. And so, yeah, I don't know how close, and not too far, Austin and San Antonio, but
it's not far.
Yeah. So
yeah, that's a good excuse to go to
yeah,
San Antonio too.
I'll shoot you a message with just some of his like social media things so you can look him up, and then I'd happy to provide an introduction as well. Because I think you both would kind of see things similarly, and I think might be able to kind of businesses might be able to work together in some capacity to kind of make some meaningful things happen in Texas specifically. I have not seen anything Kanye is doing with hemp, so now I'm going to go down that rabbit hole because I'm very curious. Because I mean that's what we need, like some major iconic person to really have a vested interest in making some stuff happen domestically. So that's cool. And just the last aspect of something you talked about there, like I'm a big proponent of like manifesting things. I think like if you say it, like be careful kind of what you're speaking, because you're going to speak it into existence, and like somehow things are going to align in some capacity. Like in most of the time, this is from personal experience with me, like a lot of the times something gets spoken, like you're subconsciously going to make moves to kind of make sure that actually happens, and do different things, like even as simple as like something I did when I left my job and wanted to just focus on everything industrial hemp. Like I just put up a post on LinkedIn, and I made a connection that I would have never thought that I would make through that post on LinkedIn, that someone saw it and reached out. And now it's like a connection I have. It's just unique things like that. And I'm a big believer of that type of stuff as well. Like speaking things out into existence is a good way to make things happen, because in the background, like stuff's going to happen. You're going to make different decisions. People are going to see that, oh, they're talking about this. I actually had that similar thought, and here's now we can connect, and just a lot of different things happen. So I love that you're kind of going to create a space to foster that type of stuff and those interactions to make meaningful change. So that's cool.
Yeah. And thank you for being able to receive it and like dissect it. Sometimes I have so much passion and like excitement. And then I feel like first, like my friends who are male, like they can just like, they'll be like, ugh, and then they're like quickly, and I'm like, oh God, like where did I go? And then they're like, well, we're like, say it, like feed it back to me, and they're just like boom, 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 and it's so concise and clean. I'm like, yes, that's where I was going with that. But I think, they always say like founders really are creating things they didn't see because they need them for themselves, or like writers are writing the words they didn't hear anyone writing. And so I do feel like for me, I'm just so community oriented and such a like, the world is flat. Like we're all in this together. Like we need to be together, that I just like wasn't seeing these spaces. I felt like everything was becoming so individualistic. And so I would say like, that hemp is a piece of this, like the towel is a piece of it. Like these are my like ways of communicating and connecting to bring people together. But like knowing not everyone is going to be into the same things I'm into, but like how do we raise above a level and be moving from this individualistic perspective into more of a community mindset. And I think that that will bind people together more, to realize there's more that connects us and separates us, because I think the media would love to show how we're all so separate, and like everyone wants to keep thinking and we have such a huge mental health crisis. We have so many things happening that it's like it's not like the way that we've been doing things is working. So we need to like look differently. And I read this book called Tribe. Have you read Tribe by chance?
No.
Um, it's less than 100 pages. It's a quick read, but he just says like, like the US has just grown so individualistic, and that like, everyone, you have when you have kids, each kid has their own room and they sleep. And he's like, that is not normal. Like we all like should be sleeping more like closer together. Like we shouldn't be so separated. And obviously technology is like contributing to that as well. So I think I'm just like very, I guess, hippie, simple, grounded in the sense that I feel like the best things in life are free, and like it's about the people, and how do we weed out all of these things the culture has created and all of these narratives, and just get down to like the things that the gifts we all have on this earth to contribute, and really coming together and building that. Like that's, whether it's manufacturing here in the US, or it's the natural dyes, or it's the space, like that to me is like the underlying value that I always want to like approach it with, because I think I guess maybe that's my gift that I'm giving. I don't know, maybe that's something I need to see happen every day. So
Yeah, that's powerful. I think it's definitely very easy to see a division through the internet. It's very easy to be like, okay, I agree with this, or I don't agree with this. Therefore, I dismiss whatever that person has to say, or now I associate with that person through like one interaction or a tweet or like a video. But then if you get together with that person and sat down and had a conversation, or we're in a space that kind of fostered a conversation around whatever topic it might be, then there's a lot more there than just quick interactions that people often form opinions on a complete subject just based on like one little tweet or blurb or video. So yeah, I think there's a lot there. I'm with you on a lot of this stuff.
Good, because not good, but like thank you. I'm glad I'm not alone.
Yeah.
But I mean, I like Kendrick Lamar dropped his latest album, and there's a video he does, and he's just like, I've decided, like I've done all this work, and it's just we're called here to love one another. That's what it is. And I'm like pretty sure that's what it is. And all these things, business, entrepreneurship, like new industries, horrible like events that occur, like we just have to find a way to like love one another, like keep choosing love through all of it. And I think that, love for people, but also love for the planet, like that's where I feel the most connected, and being respectful of what I've walked into and leaving it better than how I found it. And that's, I think with anything I do in the future, like that just has to be the energy, it has to be around it. Because anything else feels like it's just fluff, it's not actually value added. If I don't stay true to those values.
Yeah. I mean, I love to hear that as just like a consumer, hearing it from you as the founder of this company, because like that's what we need more of. Like we need more people to have that opinion of like, are you just making decisions in your company based on profitability and market opportunity, or people love to talk about like the triple bottom line and all these things, like are you actually caring about the people in the planet, like or just the profits? Like, so that's, I think just a conversation around those things is important, and I'm glad that was a theme throughout this entire conversation, because I think it's valuable for people to hear, to know that's like, this is where we're going. Hopefully, like, I mean, that being a message of Kendrick Lamar, like major iconic figure in hip hop and culture in general, that's powerful for him to be saying that. So I hope that the trend, I think the trend is going in that direction. Like you said, with younger generations, it seems to be more prevalent that they're kind of thinking differently and seeing the damage that has been done from other ways of thinking and other ways of doing business. And I'm hopefully not just like in a little echo chamber that I'm getting just reaffirmed that that's actually what's happening. It seems to be a trend. So I appreciate you really kind of taking that into account as you're running your business and the things that you're putting out into the world. and the plans that you have in the future. I'm very excited to one day be in one of these ACT UP spaces and contribute in some capacity and possibly and see a plant dyed towel and use that. I love all that. So any like final closing statements before we wrap up?
Yeah. I mean, and I guess that's reiterated like my responsibility, I think, as a founder is like, I will not do anything that I wouldn't like do for myself or my family, that I wouldn't share out and to someone else. And so I think that that's like the standard, that's the bar. And I think I forget that, to your point, that might be a little rare, in the sense that we are constantly told like, here's your growth and here's what you need to do and here's what you need to do to make it happen. But I think that it's more valuable to say no and say no why. And I think those are the questions that I hope more businesses will adopt, instead of just trying to think like the customer's always right. It's just, it might not be the right customer. And there's more opportunity in sharing why you won't do something than there is in just bending over and extending yourself to do it. I think that's something I'm trying to really practice. But I love Kendrick, and I'm going to send you the video where he said that, because it just inspires me through all of the ups and downs of building this brand, to keep going and to always like do it with like I think if anyone's starting out and it's hard and you're wondering, just be reminded, like, so many people would kill to be in your shoes, would kill to be in my shoes, right? To like deal with the problems I'm dealing with. And I think having grateful expectations for wherever you're at in your journey, whether it's an entrepreneur or it's not, just being grateful and finding the gratitude and leaving this place better than you found it, or whoever you interacted better than you found it. Like, I think that's what I want to lead with. So I guess that's what I'm ending with now.
Love that. Appreciate that perspective as well. Yeah. So I will, in the description of the video, I'll put links where everyone can find Anact products on social media and all that. And I'm excited to continue following you and see what you do next with Anact and just in general with what you do for the community that you're in now in Texas.
Thank you. You have to come to Austin. I want to do something big for South by. I have like a vision of like when people fly into the airports, like giving them a hot towel as like a welcome to Austin, South by. Maybe do like a little hemp thing around it. So
okay.
We'll definitely have to stay in contact. And yes, you're of course always welcome here as we grow too.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you very much, Brianna.
All right. Thanks, Matt.
Bye.